Welcome to Small Town Times. Today we have Bill Antler here. Bill's going in front of North Bay Council February 27th.
Yes.
And he's going to be talking about the importance and value of the West Ferris Arena at the Sam Jacks
Complex.
Recreation Complex. Yes. Bill, you were at our Ferris Business Networking meeting last night.
I was.
And you had a passionate presentation about the history of the West Ferris Arena and why it's important for the community in that place. Can you share a little bit more?
Absolutely. Most people don't really know the history of the rink. Now, I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate because as you get older, you become the oldest of. And I think I'm the oldest active rink rat. In 1966, when we moved here, they were building the West Ferris Centennial Community Center. Mm-hmm. And I still refer to it as 90% of the people that I know refer to it as WFCCC. And it has a historic element to it that most people don't know. Number one, it was built by volunteers. It wasn't something that the town of West Ferris said, we want to build it and we're going to do this. It was the volunteers went forth to the town of West Ferris because it was before amalgamation. It wasn't, amalgamation didn't occur until 1968. So as a kid, when you're 9 or 10 years old and you're seeing this and you go to Tweedsmuir School and you're watching these gentlemen work and you're getting to know them, you become fascinated. And so when it's all done, there's a plaque that goes into the West Ferris Arena, and it was the first provincially funded project from the from the federal centennial celebration. Mm-hmm. In other words, money came from the 100th anniversary of Canada to help support that community center because it was a community center. When I talk about the volunteers, it was volunteers that maybe had no affiliation with hockey, but they wanted a recreational area for their children. The land in behind the arena was gifted, and it was to be set aside for youth sports. During the amalgamation, I have no idea if that still has to hold. I'm not one of those persons that could tell you.
It was brought up when they were trying to sell that property off to make a lots in a subdivision, yes. Right? So that legacy of what the land was intentioned for,
yes,
did come up.
Yeah. Well, and
whether it had legal weight or not,
I have no idea. I have no idea because there was amalgamation that occurred in 1968, and that changed the parameters. We became the city of North Bay. However, I still say I live in West Ferris. Someone says, where do you live? I say West Ferris. They say, where's that? And I say, it's in North Bay. Much as someone says, I live in Vaughan. They say, where's that? They say, in Toronto. I'm just that West Ferris guy still, as most of the people that I grew up with that still live in West Ferris are. It's just the history of us. So the arena became a center, and I do remember the following, that when the big timbers came in on the train, because CP had a line that went all the way out to BC and came into town here. It was a main hub. We were a huge railway venue, and the timbers came over, and we all saw these massive timbers, not knowing what they were. And there's a gentleman from BC, I couldn't tell you his name, and there was a man from North Bay by the name of Howie Russell, who was a West Ferris guy. And I have no idea what Mr. Russell did, but he must have been important, whatever he did, because everyone had a certain respect for Mr. Howie Russell. I played with his kid, Greg, and he had two other boys, Todd and Robbie, that I think still live in town. And what happened was, I can remember the conversation because when you're 9 years old and someone says, and these are going to last for 150 to 200 years, you go, wow, like that's an eternity. Like they're never going to fall down. So when the arena was built, it was structurally sound for 150 to 200 years. And they had the structural engineering stamp on the back of Mr. Russell's cigarette package, because I don't believe there was a structural engineer in North Bay at the time. And this gentleman was from Sault Ste. Marie, and he did the stamping for the structural components, and based on the blueprints and conversations and pictures. And of course, you didn't have email, you didn't have social media, so everything was done. So it took quite a while to get everything done. But during the building of that arena, one of the things that was always fascinating was, I'll say names, and I think most of them still have family here. You would see people like Mr. McParland and Mr. McParland, Mr. Corvo. Those people would all finish working at the ONR. The 4:20 whistle would go at the ONR. They would go home, and at 5 o'clock, they'd all be walking over to the West Ferris Centennial Community Center to continue working into the evening. The women, which soon became the West Ferris Ladies Recreation, they would have food for them. They would make sandwiches, they would do whatever, so that as they were working, they would have something to eat, something to drink, because it was a community project. It wasn't an individual project. And the value of the community project is it became the heart of West Ferris. Before, the development of what's now the North Bay Mall, it stopped. So if you look at Mulligan Avenue, that wasn't there as kids. That was all done. In behind there used to be a thing called the Lakeshore Missionary Church, which I now believe is built down just past 640 Lakeshore Drive. Mr. Mancini owned the property, and he wanted it because he realized how much traffic there was, value there was, because of all the tournaments that were now being held, because minor hockey was being played in that arena. West Ferris Ladies Recreation had a snack bar, so when you go in on the right-hand side, there's a little snack bar there. It was nothing fancy. A sink, a pop machine, coffee machine, hot dog machine.
They were still active when I got to town in 86, 87.
Yeah, they were. And they used to put every dime they made back into that arena. Like they paid for the score clock. They paid for one of the sound systems. They helped with it. I don't know about today's current sound system that's in there. But what happens over time is people forget a history. And when you forget the history and you become, more worried about liability insurance, you can kill a volunteer organization. I know that's what happened with the West Ferris Ladies Rec. They always had the arena. And I remember my mother, when I was playing hockey, would volunteer her time, walk from our house to the work the snack bar, because it was her duty as a person in West Ferris to work the snack bar. When I was in high school, my girlfriend at the time, she worked every Sunday morning along with Debbie Poeta, who, every Sunday morning they would work the snack bar because it was a volunteer thing that you gave back. It was just natural that if you lived in West Ferris, you gave something back by volunteering within the West Ferris community, and most of it was centered around the West Ferris Centennial Community Center. I was fortunate at 13, I had a key for the arena. And my job was to walk from Cecilia Court every morning, have the arena open by 6 o'clock. And that was before the first expansion. And I would unlock the arena, I would turn on the lights, I'd carry a hockey stick because I didn't know who was going to be in that arena. And to be quite honest, I was a little bit frightened at 13.
Which was the first expansion? Was it the hall or was it the
No.
dressing rooms?
Well, when it was built, they keep talking about the expansion of the hall. So the hall was built when the arena was built.
Oh, okay.
What happened is there has been, so as you walk up the hall, if you walk up the hall now, it was all hardwood floors. And if you're looking lengthways at that hall, the left-hand side where the glass is where you can watch a hockey game, that was all kitchen.
Okay.
And where the current kitchen is, that was Don Pecor, who was the first arena manager and rec director for the township of West Ferris. That's where he slept at times. So he had an office there and a bed there. And then when they did the expansion, the first one, when they tore the dressing rooms out of the front, because as you walked in the arena, there was 4 dressing rooms. You saw the wall of the 4 dressing rooms at the back. And all that block work was done free. It was freed by Heinz Hofmeister of Heinz Construction, who donated, I have no idea how many hours that man put in to the value of West Ferris Arena. I don't think you could measure it today. He not only helped build the arena, but at one time he sponsored 8 hockey teams. And I'm sure that
Hofmeister?
Hofmeister, yeah.
Oh, okay.
His son Eric still lives here. Christine, it's interesting because his daughter Christine saw something on Facebook about the presentation, and she reached out to me and said, "I'm so glad that you're doing this. My dad would be proud."
And when you said presentation, you're talking about going to council?
Going to council, yes. Yeah. Just to let them know what the heck is going on, or maybe a sober second thought. I don't know if you can get a sober second thought anymore. I don't know how far along this is, and it's not my place to say how far along it is. But I think that people need to know the facts behind the arena, because I believe there's a little bit of a false narrative. And I don't, I think, like I said last night, if you say to your young son or young daughter, once you clean up your room, we'll go. And dad opens the door and says, "Oh, look, the room's clean, let's go." Mom opens the door and looks under the bed, and that's where everything went. Then what you've done is the little person told the truth as far as they knew, but they didn't tell all the truth. So when we talk about the West Ferris Arena, the structural element, and that's the one that really got me, finally, I've had enough. So structurally, I know that those beams are good for 150 to 200 years. However, I can't tell you what's happened underneath in a foundation, but I can tell you when they did the expansion and the second expansion, and they extended the dressing rooms, they were told at the time they would always have an issue with snow off a dome roof going on a flat roof. So that was always going to be a problem. All they had to do was somehow tie it into a dome roof, give it a slant down, and you wouldn't have had probably the issues you're having today. But like always, if someone approved something 30 years ago or 40 years ago, you don't think you're going to be around to see, what happens to it. So you go, no, we're okay with it. In Don Pecor's, I guess, knowledge, Don, who's the arena manager, used to say to us, okay, Sunday, we're all going to meet at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Bring your snow floats and your snow shovels. You're going to shovel off the flat roof. So as rink rats, we would go up there, we would shovel off the flat roof. We didn't worry about liability insurance. And actually what would happen is we'd try to get the snow so it was slanted down so we could slide down at the end and not even worry about a ladder. And we would get paid for that. We'd all get 2 hours pay, maybe might have added up to $1 each.
I think they're paying a contractor more than 6 figures for that now.
Oh, they have to. I mean, at times I think that we're a Toronto City mentality, but we're not Toronto City. Oh. And that's not a nice thing to say, but it's true. But we would go up, we would shovel it off, and they would give us 4 hours ice time. And they'd give us pizza.
Yeah.
And they'd give us like 2 hours pay.
Yeah.
So that you knew that on this Sunday, after Tip Top Rubber was done as the last ice rental, you were going to be able to go on the ice. And we would play hockey sometimes till 2 o'clock in the morning and then have to go to school Monday. And I had to be there at 6 in the morning to open the arena. So it was easier for me to sleep in the equipment room. So I would sleep in the equipment room at the West Ferris Arena, and friends would call their parents and say, Bill's sleeping at the West Ferris Arena. Can we sleep in? They'd go, yeah, sure. Why not? Then we'd lay out goalie pads and blockers and trappers. And it was a community.
Yeah. And
that's what I think everyone's missing, is that we've eroded the community. We have decided that through this false narrative, that the arena isn't structurally sound. I saw an article from 2016 where a councillor mentioned about, it's on its last legs. It's not structurally sound. So if you're going to host hockey tournaments, are you going to try to host them there? No. And councillors are still saying the same thing. The arena part would need work. I'm not going to deny that whatsoever. Building codes have changed. Maybe other things have to change. Structurally, there's nothing wrong with the roof that I can tell. That if you see the engineering report, please let me know. I've asked for it. I can't get it.
I just had Councillor Mark King and former Councillor Dave Mendocino in here at the studio, and I brought up the topic because I was admonishing them. Well, I was just pulling their chain, really, because I had advised through my column years ago that they better have a plan for West Ferris, or we're going to be talking about it all the time. And they never came out with conclusive proof or a plan what to do with the arena. They've never really proved to everybody that it needs to be torn down, and they didn't have a plan to do something after the Omichel Twin Pad Community Center goes forward. And I said that was a misstep politically for you guys not to convince everybody it was a good idea, and you had a better idea for that community center of West Ferris. I also mentioned that Omichel is far cry from being the center of any community. Of course, they were talking about how they have a long-term vision for that area of town, and eventually it will be built up around there. And the city has actually land beside it and back to the river, and possibly they might have a second route out of Premier Road to there, right? But nobody's really shared that huge vision, right?
I might win Lotto 6492 too.
Well, they might need it.
Yeah. So, but I want to say on the record that I don't believe that like Mayor Chirico, I don't believe that council, I don't believe anyone is trying to hurt anyone.
No.
All I'm saying is they don't have all the information. And maybe I'm too late to the dance. I don't know. But I can tell you this. Where the North Bay Mall is now, that used to be Lakeshore Missionary Church. Lakeshore Missionary Church was moved, as I mentioned earlier, because Pat Mancini saw they needed a mall there because of all the people coming in. So he built the mall. Mm-hmm. Again, it wasn't a city project. It was a private project. Mm-hmm. He built the mall. From there, of course, things expand. And West Ferris Secondary got built because the French high school was going to be opening. They needed a building. They got a call Secondaire Algonquin, which used to be called the Algonquin Composite School.
Yep.
So everything starts to develop, but everything is still functioned out of the West Ferris Centennial Community Center. They used to have a Bantam tournament, novice tournament, Pee Wee tournament, squirt tournament. Mm-hmm. You had 2 men's leagues in town that hosted tournaments there. So there's 6 tournaments a year. If you figure out the number of weekends of hockey in North Bay, that's every 3rd weekend you had a tournament coming up there. On a Tuesday, Thursday night, it was midget hockey. We don't have the same midget leagues anymore because we went to a AAA system, and a AAA system has sort of eroded a AA system at certain levels, and then you had a high school and you had midgets fighting over who could you play for, who couldn't you play for, and the hockey community hurt itself at that time. But again, if you look at when the narrative began about structurally the West Ferris Arena isn't safe, around that time they stopped doing things that needed to be done to the West Ferris Arena to make it that arena again. So the second expansion, I worked for a company, I believe IB Thermacoustics, and I had the privilege of helping put up all those heaters that you see in there because they used to have one of those gas line heaters that you might see at East Ferris. Mm-hmm. And they wanted these heaters because at the time, back when the arena was put up, they said if you can maintain an interior temperature somewhere between, I think it was 44 to 48 Fahrenheit, which I don't know what that is in Celsius today, that would do wonders for the wood.
Well, 32 is freezing, right?
Yeah.
So
just above freezing for the wood. They said you shouldn't let it get super cold because when it gets super hot, you got contraction, expansion. But if you could maintain it at a certain thing, it's got to do with humidity. And I didn't understand it then, don't understand it now. And so these new heaters were put up, and the old wooden seats were torn out. They put in these new concrete seats. I didn't count the number of heaters, but I think there's 4 or 5 per side. I've been told they have not been turned on for 12 years.
I can imagine that because I've been in there shooting, and it's pretty cold.
Yeah. So as the narrative began, things started to slip. If you don't maintain things, then you have a massive bill at the end when it's time to fix things. So when I hear, about it could cost a fortune, that's not the taxpayer's fault. That's past council's fault. It's not this council's fault. It's past council's fault. Mm-hmm. That's why I say I'm not trying to throw anyone under a bus. Peter and I are friends, like Mayor Chirico, and I would never think that he would do anything to hurt the township of West Ferris. And I still call it the township of West Ferris, and he corrects me and tells me it's in North Bay. And I say, yeah, but where do you live? And he will say Woodfield. And I go, there, Peter. But so when you think that something isn't structurally sound, you go, why are we going to spend money on it?
Yeah, it's been neglected over the last
and it's been
while.
neglected.
It's sort of bandaged.
Yes, and as it gets more and more neglected, then things start to fall apart quicker. Mm-hmm. So then the value of it, you go, well, I don't know what we're going to do with this. So
I guess some of the other issues is like we were talking about, codes have changed, accessibility, size of that hallway, size of the doors, right, for disabled and accessible, the elevator to go up to the upstairs. But I would like to see a shopping list of how much it would cost to continue using it. You outlined a potential plan of where, if they don't end up building that old Michelle, maybe they can put a pad in behind.
Well, yes. So some of the other things is because I got to meet certain people. I had became the chair for the Canadian Hockey Initiation Program for Ontario. It's called the CHIP program. Today you know it as the TIKE program. And we helped develop
Timbits, I think.
Timbits type. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I don't even know. Everything went to U9 and U13.
Hockey for beginners.
Yeah, and I can't figure out what the heck it is. Well, Hockey for Beginners, the very first Hockey for Beginners program was operated at the West Ferris Centennial Community Center by Rose Blair.
Yeah, we actually featured that in the Back in the Bay
Oh,
magazine.
did you?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, Rose was a genius. And the way that all the instructors happened was you played bantam or midget AA hockey out of West Ferris, and you were giving back to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have a choice in this.
Yeah.
And if you were playing a game and you mouthed at a referee on a Thursday, you were betting your bottom dollar that you were either linesing a game or reffing a game for younger kids with the person that you had mouthed at on the weekend. It wasn't. It was to teach you respect about a sport. It was to teach you that it's better to be involved in a community. It was to teach you that the community center is the center of where you live, so treat it right. Just a funny story. I was 15. I wanted to try a cigarette. And it was dark. I left the West Ferris Arena, had a cigarette. I go walking home, and my father, who works on the railroad, he's home. I said, "Hi, Dad. How are you?" He said, "How was the cigarette?" I said, "What are you talking about?" Mrs. Abdullah called and told me you had a cigarette. So everyone looked out for everyone, you know. And I say the Abdullah family, just a wonderful family, you know.
Is that Wendy's?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Mrs. Abdullah, Carol was, she had a lot of work to do with the West Ferris Ladies Recreation, and every one of her girls worked the snack bar.
Right.
My daughter she worked the snack bar when her brothers were playing. So for us, it was always a family thing going to the arena. And for most people, it's a family thing going to the arena. But when you take that, a narrative, and you make it sound like it's worse than it is, you're not being fair to all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, you know, we've neglected it for 14 years, and because of that, the cost could be greater. You say, well, structurally, it's not sound. And what I was mentioning yesterday, and you mentioned about accessibility, anyone who knows what the issue is now, you tear down those dressing rooms. That's not rocket science. There's an error in the fact that you have snow falling on a flat roof that you have to continually remove. And now it cost you whatever, $100,000 or $200,000. I'm just arbitrarily saying a figure, versus 4 hours ice time, pizza, and maybe $8. Then you say, well, the cost. Well, there's ways around the cost, you know. And in all of it, no matter what happens at the end, I want to make sure that the West Ferris Centennial Community Center is the West Ferris Centennial Community Center. And I'm not sure if anyone wants to tear it down. I don't believe anyone wants to tear it down, because I don't think anyone wants that political headache. And that would be MPP, MP, mayor, council. No one wants to tear it down. So I don't think that's ever an option for that arena, which brings me to point number 2. Mm-hmm. In that scenario where you said about an ice pad at the back, and I mentioned about being former with the Canadian Hockey Initiation Program, and we were figuring out if it's Timbits or Tykes. One of the huge things that has come out of recommendations is to have children play games in small spaces. So you have an arena that, of course, is not the Olympic size. It's not 100 by 200. If I remember right, it's 80 by 180. So it's short. It's not as wide. But it's a perfect size arena for Timbits, for U8 or U7 or U9 or U13. You've got them playing games in controlled spaces where they develop their skills quicker. When I was 17 and 18, Canadore College and Cambrian College played the OCAA championships there. So all of a sudden, how did this arena become too small? Again, it's part of a narrative.
I think it's too small in comparison to where everybody else went to bigger, right? But like you say, it's ideal for a certain age group for hockey. And even more so now because they don't even allow body checking in those divisions, which is another topic I'm sure you'd love to talk about.
I helped write the body checking back into Canada. I was on the the original 5 that helped write the skill development to put body checking back in hockey. Mm-hmm. That's a political decision, but we'll talk another day.
And I know, and my boy played out of there through all through hockey, and even with West Ferris High School. The boards near the lobby are so dangerous because there's no give, right? So it isn't a great place for big boys to play check-in hockey. But it's a great ice in size for younger youth hockey. Just like the bonus baseball field.
Yeah, right.
It was beautiful field, big trees and shade, but it wasn't good for Bantam baseball players, but it was good up to Pee Wee, right? And now the fields are too big for the little guys.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. Anyways, back to the possibilities.
So this is my thought, is that what you do is you take your 10, 12, 13, $14 million and you refurbish the West Ferris Arena. Number one. Do you have to make it bigger, wider? I don't think so. But if you want to, then you go right ahead and do it. A second pad could be placed if you're looking at the arena, sort of the left-hand side where they have the tennis courts. We don't use the tennis courts. There's no lights up there anymore. They don't have evening tennis. And I don't believe the city goes in there in June and says, we're going to put up lights here now, then we're going to take them back out. Don't do that.
It's used during the day for tennis. I used to have an office, right? I looked out the old Tweedsmuir school, and I could see people paying during the day.
During the day. Yeah. So we don't really have a huge tennis market there. Most people go up to the Four Seasons Club, Granite Club, I think it's called now.
Yeah, they've expanded and they have some nice courts there.
Yeah, so I think most persons go there. So if you look at putting an arena structure to the back or to the side, some people are going to scream about the about the loss of the kids' soccer. You don't really lose the kids' soccer, because what you can do is you can move that back to the Tapper Gray Field, because the Tapper Gray Field is not being utilized fully. And we used to have 2 soccer associations in North Bay. Sue Knight had, I think it was called North Bay Soccer Association, and Sue's an angel for all the fundraising she's done over the years to make sure that that would continue. But again, volunteers, numbers running out, fundraising is becoming harder. Yep. So Sue Knight has mentioned that they are going to be done. I think maybe they're done. It was now.
Already announced. Yeah.
Okay. And you have the North Bay Youth Soccer Association. Well, North Bay Youth Soccer Association doesn't play very often out at the new Omishal facility. They play where? The overpass.
I think most of the soccer that's in behind Tweedsmuir, former Tweedsmuir, West Ferris, is Timbit level, very, very small.
So if you look at the school that's beside the arena, I'm sure if you went to the school board, that whichever one owns it now, is you would go to them and say, if we refurbish these fields, could we host this here? And they would have it for their kids. So it's not like you're going to lose the fields. You can move the fields, use the fields. They're still going to be in the same location. But you can create another ice pad there. You could actually put in pickleball courts. You could make an arena for both the Lakers teams. I've gone to Lakers games, and I think Mike McParland and the Lakers, Nipissing has done a wonderful job. However, you're not getting the fans you thought you'd get. I've gone into a game there, and if you're lucky, there's 200 fans.
Great
hockey facility. Yeah. Good, yeah, it's good hockey, but it just doesn't attract the people. If you built an arena, one pad, fixed up the West Ferris Centennial Community Center, then what you could do is build an arena that may be a little bit more than the 1 pad or 2 pads you're going to build at Omishal and still save a fortune. You could build something that would seat maybe 800 people. You could have a fitness room. You could have meeting rooms, pickleball courts. I've read about walking tracks. I think in Northern Ontario, when we talk about walking tracks, we have a couple already in here, and I don't mean to be narrow-minded, but we have the North Bay Mall, the Northgate Square, which I see a lot of people walking when I've been in there, people that I know that have had heart attacks that go in there and they walk. We have Memorial Gardens where you can walk around. So the walking track, I'm not really sure how important that would be in the final play, and I'm not trying to condemn anyone for it. I understand they want it, but is it a priority? And if you put a suspended walking track in there, what's the cost of that? I mean, but you could put in pickleball courts. You could have squash rackets. You could have maybe even put in a dome down there, an outdoor dome or something. But I just don't see it being $80 million. And I understand that there's a motion that went through for it at $60 million as a progressive build, and I can commend Mayor Chirico for doing it. And when you talk about this whole idea of building something that you're not sure if you need, and I'm not sure about the other part, but North Bay hasn't grown much. So in 1976, you can check the numbers. The population of Barrie was about 48,000 people. Population of Oakville, Ontario was about 49,000 people. North Bay was, I think, 42 or 43,000 people. We've come up to 50,000.
54, I think, almost now.
54? We're on a growth spurt. So 54,000 versus the growth of Barrie versus the growth of Oakville. Are we going to have a massive growth opportunity over the next 50 years? I mean, I don't think we're going to hit 100,000. Culturally, we've changed. We don't have as many children playing hockey. And I'm not saying that we're not going to have more. All I'm saying is we're in a little bit of a downturn here. So if we could take something we have, utilize it, repurpose it so that it becomes the arena that it was meant to be. Again, build a new arena, have something like pickleball courts and things that are community driven. We can recreate a vibrant West Ferris. Mm-hmm. When you used to have the tournaments, every motel was full. Every motel was full. Restaurants. We had more restaurants in West Ferris. And they were busy. The mall was vibrant. I remember Tim Trache, he had the Grecos. Peter Greco had it, sold it to Trache family from Espanola. And he would put ads in every single program that every team put together. Because we used to have a program, I'm not sure if you remember, and you'd go in and you'd get your, in the middle would be the tournament page, but you would have a listing of all the players and everyone wanted to see it, and he would put a coupon in there. 20% off pizzas at Greco's in Ferris. And he told me, he said, the first tournament, within the first 3 hours, I've gotten all my money back from sponsoring you because that's how busy we are. Mm-hmm. We don't have that now.
No. Yeah. Well, I definitely concur that there's potential at the West Ferris Gertrude location that needs to be explored and articulated. I know that it's got this huge momentum towards the twin pad and Michelle. They're going to let the RFP. I think they have to have one more meeting because there was a call for motion, a notice of motion by Jamie Lowery. So that they're going to have another meeting to get it through, and they're going to go down that road, and they're going to find out whether 60 million or 70 million or what can be done, and then they'll have to come up with a plan B. And so this is probably timely for you to accentuate the fact that West Ferris hasn't been completely considered as the right place for a community center.
Yeah, thank you. And as I say, lived in West Ferris all my life. And, things change, and I get it. Like, you go with the times. But if you decide that you're going to erase the history of the times, and it has to suit a certain narrative, then that becomes an issue for me. Mm-hmm. I've read, I understand. The federal government wants to give money for this project. But there's conditions to it.
Yeah.
It's going to be at the Omichel rink. That's a condition.
I thought that the condition was lifted for them to consider other locations. And then they went back to Omichel.
No idea. But that's not what I have read. If I'm wrong, then my apologies wholeheartedly.
Well, the thing about that grant is that it's going to cost them at least $10 million for the $25 million. There's associated costs built into that, right? So
certainly,
whether or not that's really gummed up things and whether they can't do anything without it, I'm not sure.
Like, for anyone who thinks it's a blank check for $26 million, it's absolutely not. But the way sometimes you read it, it's like a blank check for $26 million. But as you say, there are conditions. And I'm sure that the people on council, they've looked at the conditions. I'm sure Mayor Chirico's looked at the conditions. And I would never, as I say, I'm not going to argue with any of them. I'm just giving you a sober second thought that maybe think about this. Because if you can refurbish that West Ferris Arena, expand it, do whatever you need to do for $12 or $15 million, which sounds like a lot. And I know people are going to go, well, you've got wiring, you've got this, you've got that, you've got this. That's a lot of money. If you can now build a series of dressing rooms, you tear down the old one, build a series of dressing rooms. You were going to build 2 series of dressing rooms for the new twin pad. Now, you're not losing any money there. You're still building 2 sets of dressing rooms. So to say, well, it's going to cost an extra just for these dressing rooms. No, it's not. You got to consider this as the secondary ice surface. And when you're all done, if you can add more and come out at $45 million, that's a heck of a lot better for me as a taxpayer over the next whatever, and I give them a lot of credit. And the problem is, this should have been dealt with a long time ago. Yeah. Should have. It's not, it's dumped in their lap.
Wish I coulda, shoulda.
Yeah. It was dumped in their lap. They're trying to make a decision. And like I say, I could be late to the dance, but something occurred and it just irritated me to the fullest.
Well, that's great that you're stepping up and talking about it. It's getting people talking. There's going to be imagination put forward. There's going to be momentum of energy. It would be very interesting to see what happens at council when you do make your presentation. Nothing's done yet.
No, and when it's all done, whatever they decide, they have to decide. And as a citizen of North Bay, excuse me, I'm not going to wrap them. They have a decision to make. But I just want them to listen. I want them to think. I want them to have a second thought. I want them to have proper discussion, because I don't know if the proper discussion has happened. And that's based on a narrative. A narrative that structurally the arena is not sound. Not true. The dressing room area of the arena has certain flaws in it that really we should change. The foundation, you can't see the foundation, but I'm sure that if you go down deep enough, because as a kid, it seemed like the holes where they put these big cement things were, down in China, for crying out loud. But if you go down and you see, and you may have some foundational structures that you have to correct, then that's a lot cheaper than building an arena. You're not blasting rock. They've just upgraded the sewer system down through there. It's not like there's an additional cost for. And so I really hope that they think about it. But in the end, I'm still friends with the mayor, and I'm not going to talk negative. I'm just asking for the opportunity. And I think that the more citizens that come out and listen, I think that will have a big swaying of what actually happens in this. Because I haven't heard anyone in West Ferris who says, this is a great idea.
The Omishal.
Yeah, Omishal. When I've talked with people from Algonquin, like up on the Airport Hill, I've said to them, so how are you going to go to the arena? Just so I know. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go down the Airport Hill and then a bypass, and I'm going to go and Lakeshore and back.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, I don't blame you. Why would you not go through West Ferris? Why wouldn't you come down the hill, go down Algonquin, go down Main Street, go down Lakeshore? Why would I do that? So in this, if the federal funding is the $26 million, how much do we lose in businesses having to fold? How much do we lose in an area not becoming attractive again? And I think it's an attractive area.
It certainly is, for sure. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Hopefully it helps start some more conversations, have more people thinking and putting their energy into it. And we'll probably hear more about what the long-term vision really is for Omishal, because they're going to have to try to convince people. I think there's been a lack of convincing going on, and now is a good time for them to do it. thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I appreciate this. Very good to meet you.